Welcome to the journey of science and sleep. Imagine that as you lie down to rest, up above the moon still quietly shines and governs the invisible rhythms of the ocean. Few people know that this gentle moon has the power to pull the tides across the earth, influencing nature and even human life. In today's video, we will explore that mystery in a light, easy to understand, and fascinating way. Don't forget to hit subscribe and watch until the end so you won't miss other exciting knowledge about the universe around us. When mentioning the moon, most of us often think of its gentle beauty in the night sky. But few would expect that the moon not only exists to light up the dark nights, but also silently keeps the rhythm for one of the greatest dances on Earth, the rise and fall of the tides. Each time you stand by the seashore, watching the waves recede to reveal the wet sand and then slowly return, you are witnessing an ancient symphony whose conductor is the moon. This is not magic, but pure physics, a kind of physics that is sometimes more poetic and beautiful than words. Gravity is the first key to unlocking this secret. The moon may be small, only 1/16th the size of Earth, but because it is close, its pull creates a striking difference. Imagine Earth being surrounded by a giant blanket of water. The moon gently pulls that blanket toward itself, making the oceans bulge into a tidal peak. But the fascinating part is that on the opposite side, farthest from the moon, there is also a second tidal peak. It looks as if our planet is being stretched at both ends. This is the result of the balance of forces. On the near side, water is pulled more strongly, while on the far side, inertia causes water to pile up, creating the opposite bulge. These two swells always exist, and as Earth rotates, every coastline passes through them in turn, making us experience two high tides and two low tides each day. If it stopped there, tides would be a simple, regular, and easily predictable pattern. But reality is richer and more complex. Earth is not a smooth sphere, and the oceans are not an evenly spread blanket of water. Continents, coastlines, ocean basins, even the depth of bays and straits all influence how tides form and move. In some places, tides can rise up to tens of meters, such as in Canada's Bay of Fundy. In other places, because of special terrain, tides almost vanish. It is precisely the combination of cosmic forces and the complex shape of the planet that creates countless local rhythms, like unique variations on the moon's common melody. The strangeness and beauty of tides lie in the fact that they are both a mechanical phenomenon and a vivid story of nature. Thousands of years ago, when humans did not know physics formulas or satellites, they already looked up at the moon and linked it with the changing seas. Tides were humanity's first lunar calendar. Fishermen learned to wait for the water to rise or fall to catch fish. Sailors relied on its cycle to calculate journeys. Even many cultures saw tides as messages from sea gods, tied to spiritual beliefs. The rhythm of the sea under the moonlight both sustained human life and sparked imagination. Today, modern science allows us to understand tides with accuracy down to the centimeter. Computers can predict them years in advance. Satellites observe the changing sea surface by the hour. Yet, no matter how much we explain, it's hard to escape the feeling that the ocean is truly listening to the moon. A small, distant celestial body, yet it weaves a continuous song resonating across the planet. Each time the tide rises and falls, we see clearly the invisible thread connecting the vast cosmos with daily life. Tides are not just a natural phenomenon, but also a driving force of evolution. Many primitive organisms formed in the intertidal zone, where water alternately covers and recedes. That constantly changing environment forced them to adapt, opening new evolutionary paths. One could say without tides, the history of life on Earth would have taken another course. Even today, many species still live by the cycles of the moon and tides, from red crabs migrating with the full moon to coral reefs spawning simultaneously by the sea calendar. All are proof that the rhythm of the moon is not just physics, but is imprinted deep in the genes of life. But the story doesn't end there. The moon is not standing still. Each year, it drifts a few centimeters farther away from Earth. This means that tides in the future will also change, and the rhythm we are used to will gradually transform over time. Imagine millions of years from now, when a day on Earth is longer and the tides are weaker, our planet will wear a completely different face. Tides, so familiar and often overlooked, turn out to be one of the factors shaping Earth's distant future. There is a humility in this realization. We often think we are the center of the world, but just by looking at the moon and listening to the rhythm of the sea, we see how small we are. It is the moon, the silent companion that has been and is keeping the oceans breathing to an ancient rhythm, reminding us that all life is connected by the invisible thread of the universe. And from that connection, we find both science, history, and a gentle poetry. Tides are not just a mere physical phenomenon, but a fundamental rhythm imprinted in the natural history and culture of humankind. When humans had neither calendars nor clocks, it was the rise and fall of tides that became a primitive kind of compass. On long, moonless nights, fishermen learned to listen to the sound of retreating waves, to observe the traces of water, to know when the tidal flats would be exposed, where they could gather clams, mussels, or set up nets to catch schools of fish. And during spring tides, when the moon and the sun together pull the oceans, the sea revealed more secrets than usual. Long sandbanks, reefs emerging, or powerful currents carrying boats far offshore. Tides, in a sense, taught humans the first lesson about cycles, that everything at one time rises and at another falls. The combination of the moon and the sun in creating tides is also a beautiful demonstration of the universe's resonance. When both align on one side, the force seems to go beyond vision, raising taller water columns and pushing tidal flats farther away. Conversely, when they stand at right angles, the ocean calms down, like a giant breathing gently. This alternation created the familiar 2-week cycle. Spring tide, neap tide, a rhythm so stable that our ancestors, though knowing nothing of gravity, could predict it with astonishing accuracy. That is why in many cultures, the moon is not only a symbol of night, but also of farming, fishing, and even spiritual life. If you have ever sat by the sea during a full moon, you will sense the strange feeling of hearing waves roar more powerfully than usual. That is not only the sound of water, but the echo of two celestial bodies simultaneously pulling on the same ocean blanket. Conversely, during a half moon, the sea seems to lull with gentle waves, softer rhythms. Interestingly, these very cycles also affect biological behavior. Many species of fish, crabs, and bivalves have evolved to synchronize with the tides. When the water rises, they leave their shelters to search for food. When it falls, they hide under sand or reefs. Their life cycles, from reproduction to feeding, are tied to this cosmic rhythm. It is an ancient dance of which humans are only late observers. Not only in nature, but human culture and history also bear the mark of tides. It is said that in many naval battles, the side that better understood tidal calendars often gained the advantage. European sailors of the Middle Ages, when crossing the Atlantic, did not rely only on the North Star, but also observed tides to know when ships could leave harbors or dock safely. In Asia, floating markets and fishing villages along coasts arranged their daily lives according to tides. Even art and poetry reflect this change. When the sea surges and when it recedes, people see in it the image of their own lives, cycles of hope, loss, and rebirth. From the perspective of modern science, tides are also a vast laboratory for astrophysics. They are vivid evidence that the gravitational field is not an instantaneous force, but a differential distribution across distance. On a planet where everything was affected equally, tides would not exist. But because the moon pulls more strongly on the near side and less strongly on the far side, this difference creates a graceful dance of water. This explains why even a much smaller body like the moon has a greater influence on tides than the sun. Not because its overall pull is stronger, but because the difference in force across distance is more pronounced. Thanks to this, the moon becomes the conductor of the oceans, while the sun plays the role of the powerful background music. Remarkably, tides do not only affect the seas, they also silently influence Earth itself. As oceans move to the moon's rhythm, the frictional energy between water and the planet's crust is released, gradually slowing Earth's rotation. At the same time, this reaction makes the moon drift farther away, a few centimeters each year. It may sound small, but over hundreds of millions of years, it has changed the length of a day and the distance between Earth and the moon. This means tides are not only a rhythm of the present, but also a driving force shaping the planet's distant future. Some scientists even argue that without tides, the evolution of life on land might have been very different. Intertidal zones, where land and sea constantly alternate, were harsh but rich environments that forced organisms to adapt. From there, life took its first steps from the sea onto land. The beauty of tides lies in the fact that they are a multi layered symphony. On the physical layer, they are the resonance of gravity, inertia, and Earth's rotation. On the biological layer, they are the natural clock for countless species. On the cultural layer, they are an endless source of inspiration, from romantic poems to seafaring tales. And on the philosophical layer, tides are a reminder that we are always connected to the vast universe, that even while sitting on the sand at sunset, what we see is not only waves, but the shared heartbeat of Earth and the moon. So next time you walk on the beach, pause for a moment, watch the water rise to cover your feet, then slowly retreat. Remember that in that moment, you are witnessing the silent cooperation of giant celestial bodies. And perhaps realizing that we are part of that rhythm, you will feel a strange peace, a tranquility born from knowing that even in the chaos of life, there are immutable cycles, the steady breaths of the planet and the universe. If the moon is considered the conductor and the ocean the instrument, then humans are the oldest audience and also fellow artists who have known how to blend into this cosmic symphony for thousands of years. Since ancient times, people have paid attention to the strange rise and fall of the water and recorded it with rudimentary observations. The first inhabitants along the coasts had no telescopes, no satellites, but they had eyes, ears, and boundless curiosity. They saw that the sea did not just ripple with the wind, but also breathed in a repeating rhythm, tied to the silver moon above. Thanks to that, early civilizations discovered the connection between the sky and the tides and turned it into knowledge passed down through generations. In ancient China, farmers along the Yangtze River knew to choose planting days according to tidal cycles, letting the water bring silt into their fields. The Babylonians and Greeks carefully recorded the phenomenon of rising and falling seas, linking it to the phases of the moon. On Polynesian islands, tides even became a compass for long voyages, helping boats glide safely past sharp coral reefs. These traditions show that tides are not only a physical phenomenon, but also a bridge between humans and the cosmos, a living calendar carved into the minds of communities. Modern science, with telescopes and computers, has elevated that understanding to another level. Today's tide tables are so detailed that they indicate the exact minute of water rise and fall at a harbor years in advance, based on hundreds of variables. Yet, fascinatingly, no matter how sophisticated the tools, the foundation of it all still stems from what the ancients intuitively recognized: the moon and the sun pulling the oceans in harmony like a cosmic symphony. Behind every complex equation lies the simple truth: when those two celestial bodies align, the seas rise higher; when they oppose, the waters calm. However, tides never exist in an isolated vacuum. They often combine with other natural phenomena, creating immense power, sometimes destructive. During great storms, strong winds and low pressure can push waves inland. If that coincides with a spring tide, water levels rise far beyond safety, causing severe coastal flooding. Many natural disasters in history have been worsened precisely because of this collaboration between storms and tides. Conversely, in rare cases, when low tide coincides with a storm, the impact may be lighter, as if nature itself offered a merciful breath. Beyond that, tides have also left a deep mark on human culture and spirit. Imagine standing on the shore during a full moon night. The waves rise higher than usual, moonlight reflecting off the sea into a shimmering silver band. That feeling has been praised by poets for thousands of years. In Greek mythology, the moon and the sun often appeared as two deities, both loving and opposing, with the sea as the witness of their eternal struggle. In Japanese culture, tides are linked to the concept of ukiyo, the floating world, reflecting the fragility and constant change of life. Folk tales, seaside lullabies, or fishing festivals all carry the image of the rhythm of ebb and flow. Earth's geography turns tides into unique variations, and these differences also shape the colorful mosaic of humanity. The Bay of Fundy in Canada, where the water rises higher than a multi-story building, has become a famous tourist destination where visitors witness nature's unrivaled power. In contrast, the tranquil Mediterranean, where tidal differences are only a few centimeters, offers another perspective: that not every place on this planet feels the moon's breath clearly. These differences, whether large or small, all contribute to shaping the lifestyle, economy, and culture of coastal communities. Today, in the era of satellites and artificial intelligence, tides are not only a spectacle to admire or a challenge to overcome, but also a hidden source of energy. In many countries, tidal turbines have been installed in estuaries, transforming the rhythmic motion of water into clean electricity. Unlike wind or sunlight, which are often unpredictable, tides bring stability, predictable decades in advance. This is proof that an ancient natural phenomenon, once tied to mythology and culture, has now become a key to a more sustainable future. But even as we harness tides for technology, they retain their sacred essence, a reminder that we are never apart from the cosmos. Every ripple on the sand, every rising tide covering the marsh, is a sign of the intimate connection between this planet and distant celestial bodies. The moon and the sun, with their endless gravitational dance, not only create the rhythm of the oceans, but also weave long chapters in human history. From ancient fishermen to modern engineers, from folk songs to coastal research stations, all sing together the same melody, the melody of the tides. And perhaps that is what makes tides so special. They are not only science, not only nature, but also a human story. A story written with waves, with moonlight, with the sweat of coastal laborers, and with the imagination of poets. When you look out at the sea and see the water rising or receding, remember that you are witnessing part of the planet's oldest symphony, a symphony still resonating through every generation. The moon is not only the invisible conductor of the tides, but also humanity's oldest diary. When humans first looked up at the sky, they saw a giant clock constantly changing, repeating regularly in cycles that the naked eye could perceive. It was this regularity that made the moon the first tool for measuring time, older than sundials or astronomical stone pillars. From the cycle of the new moon to the full moon, humans measured the rhythms of life: sowing, harvesting, fishing, departing, resting. In English, the word month comes from moon, reflecting this close relationship. In the East, civilizations such as China, Vietnam, and Korea developed lunar calendars based on the moon's cycle, so that during each Lunar New Year or Mid Autumn festival, entire communities would look up at the moon together and feel a connection that transcended time. But the moon did not only guide farmers and fishermen, it was also the companion of travelers, those courageous enough to cross the seas before modern maps existed. The Polynesians, famous as skilled navigators, used the moon along with the stars to steer across thousands of kilometers of the Pacific Ocean. They observed tides, lunar cycles, and the rising and setting of stars to determine their position. For them, the moon was a compass, a clock, and a lighthouse illuminating the night sky. In fact, records in Polynesian folklore show that they chose departure times based on favorable tides, allowing their boats to glide faster. A clear proof that understanding the relationship between the moon and water was not just observational knowledge, but also a key to survival. The miracle is that while ancient civilizations often explained tides through mythology, they simultaneously maintained remarkably accurate folk science practices. Farmers knew that planting crops during the full moon led to abundant harvests. Fishermen knew that when the moon was full, fish moved in larger schools. These observations, though not explained by physics, were entirely grounded in real-life experience and knowledge accumulated over generations. We can see an intriguing intersection here: mythology and science coexisting, both serving human life. Entering the early modern era, curiosity about the moon and tides drove many thinkers to search for scientific explanations. Johannes Kepler, the 17th century astronomer, once stated that the moon drew the oceans with a mysterious force. Although his wording was vague, he was moving closer to the concept of gravity, which Isaac Newton would later formally define. In 1687, in Principia Mathematica, Newton affirmed that tides were the direct result of gravitational forces from the moon and the sun. This was a great turning point. From attributing the phenomenon to gods, humanity had found the answer in natural laws. And interestingly, this scientific explanation did not diminish the poetry of it all, but instead deepened our awe at the invisible connection between the sky and the sea. Today, with advanced technology, humans can predict tides down to the exact minute and centimeter, decades in advance. But behind those cold numbers, one constant remains: human emotion before the sea and the moon. Standing before the swelling ocean on a full moon night, we can sense a resonance with our ancestors thousands of years ago, those who also gazed at the moonlight, listened to the waves, and wondered what made the sea move. The moon not only affects water, but also leaves its mark on our very minds and cultures. Many languages associate the moon with mood changes, mystery, or even madness. The word lunatic in English comes from luna, the moon. In art, poetry, and literature, the moon has become a symbol of longing, romance, melancholy, or eternity. Classical poetry, from China's Tang dynasty to medieval Europe, praised the moon and linked it to the sea. For in the human mind, no image is at once so familiar, so mysterious, and so intertwined with daily life. Even modern science shows the moon's subtle effects on living beings. Some species of coral spawn only on full moon nights, when tides and light combine to create ideal conditions. Some sea turtles use the moon to navigate their journey from sandy beaches back to the ocean. Even humans, with their complex biological rhythms, seem to be sensitive to moonlight. Some studies suggest that sleep may change slightly depending on the lunar phase, though the effect is not as strong as folklore once claimed. But it is precisely this belief that the moon can stir not only the sea but also the soul that has become part of human culture. When we put everything together, we realize tides are not simply the rise and fall of water levels. They are an invisible bridge linking science and myth, linking practical observation and vivid imagination. The moon, throughout tens of thousands of years, has served as a measuring tool, a poetic symbol, and a reminder that we are never separate from the universe. The waves crashing today still sing the same melody our ancestors once heard. And when we look at the moon, we are also looking into history, the history of the sea, of time, and of humanity itself. When observing the intertidal zone, we realize it is not only a unique ecological spectacle, but also a vivid metaphor for the relationship between humans and the moon. Just as those tiny creatures must adapt to constant change, humanity since its earliest days has had to learn how to read the lunar cycles and rely on them to survive and thrive. The tides are not only a natural phenomenon, they are the background music echoing through evolutionary history, pushing life toward new forms. Some scientists even suggest that the ceaseless oscillation of the tides created a natural laboratory where organic molecules collided, dissolved, and merged, forming the first links of life. If that is true, then we may say that the union of the ocean and the moon is the primordial mother of us all. The intertidal zone today still preserves the image of that distant past. Each time the tide rises and falls, the tide pools become miniature worlds of experimentation. Some species try to avoid challenges with hard protective shells. Others face them directly, stretching out their tentacles to seize opportunities when the water returns. Some rely on collectives, building biological fortresses against the waves. All of them reflect a lesson familiar to humans. Adaptability is the key to survival. We too have spent thousands of years learning how to read signals from the moon to sow seeds in the right season, set sail at the right time, and organize communities in harmony with the rhythm of the cosmos. Yet what makes the intertidal zone special is not only its survival strategies, it is also the richness and unexpected beauty of an environment that seems harsh. Small fish swim into rock crevices, taking advantage of temporary waters to hide from predators. Seabirds dive when the tide recedes, turning chaos into a feast. Then, as the water rises, the ocean reclaims its territory, sweeping away the land's brief exposure. The scene is like a two-act play, with the moon as the silent director, patiently lifting and lowering the curtain of water day after day, century after century. It is no wonder these observations have nourished human imagination. In Japanese culture, there is a legend that the moonlight reflected on the sea is a bridge connecting the mortal world with the divine. In the West, Greek mythology ties the goddess Selene to the silver moon, believed to command giant waves and stir human hearts. These images, though born from ancient beliefs, reflect a scientific truth. The moon truly governs the tides and indirectly shapes both human life and culture. In the modern era, where artificial satellites orbit Earth and supercomputers calculate tides down to the second, it is easy to forget the romance of the phenomenon. But Standing on rocky shores at low tide, seeing countless creatures crowded in tiny pools, we understand that this is not just scientific data, but a vivid portrait of life. The moon, with its silent gravity, has created one of the richest stages for nature's performance. Even more surprising is sobriety is the similar rhythm of the intertidal zone and the rhythms of humans. Sleep, menstrual cycles, even our psychological states have at times been thought to be influenced by the moon. Though science still debates the actual extent of these effects, it is undeniable that the moon has planted a deep seed in the collective subconscious of humanity. We look to the moon to tell time, to find direction, to feel a resonance with the universe. And the intertidal zone, where the bond between moon and earth is most clearly expressed, becomes proof that we are never separate from nature's rhythms. Yet within this picture, there are also warnings. As climate change drives sea levels higher, the intertidal zone is shrinking and changing rapidly. Ecosystems that depended on the stable cycles of tides now face unprecedented uncertainty. If the moon is the conductor, then humanity is now intruding into the orchestra, altering the original melody. Species that withstood waves for thousands of years are now threatened by our own hands. The tides still obey the law of gravity, but the environment they nourish is on the brink of change. That is why looking at the intertidal zone brings not only wonder, but also responsibility. Each time the sea recedes, leaving shimmering pools reflecting the sky, it is like a mirror reminding us that life on Earth is fragile and interconnected. Just as the moon cannot be separated from the ocean, humans cannot be separated from nature. If that balance is lost, the ancient rhythms that once sustained the planet may be broken. And yet the miracle lies in this. Even within fragility, there is enduring strength. The moon has patiently guided the tides for billions of years, and the intertidal zone has endured throughout the history of life. They remind us that there is a greater rhythm, longer, broader, more encompassing, the rhythm of the universe. No matter how much technology or precise calendars humans create, we remain small creatures living to the music sung in duet by the moon and the earth. So whenever you walk along the shore and see the tide recede, remember that before you lies not just sand, rocks, and strange creatures. You are witnessing one of the oldest dances on earth, choreographed by the moon and performed by the tides. A dance that has shaped the history of life, nourished civilization, and continues to remind us that we belong to a rhythm larger than ourselves. Humans have long turned their gaze to the sky, where the moon quietly hangs like a silver lamp. But that gentle light is only an outer shell. Its true power lies in the invisible gravity, stretching not only the oceans, but also the rhythm of human life. From ancient coastal villages to modern cities, the tides have become the heartbeat of the earth, and the moon is the conductor directing that rhythm. When observing the rise and fall of the tides, we do not merely see a simple physical phenomenon. We are witnessing a grand story of interaction between celestial body and planet, of how cosmic cycles seep into every small creature. In the tidal flats, oysters close their shells when the water recedes, open them when it rises, as if listening to invisible commands from the sky. Seaweed, crabs, small fish, starfish, all have learned to live in the in-between of dry and wet, of safety and danger. Each creature there is proof that to survive, one does not resist the cycle but dissolves into it. It is in this relationship that humans have found inspiration, lessons, and even life itself. Coastal people, from Japanese fishermen to European communities, knew how to choose the right time to cast nets, dive, or harvest according to the breath of the tides. Each time the sea opened, they seized the opportunity. Each time it closed, they rested and prepared. The tides, in a sense, created the primordial clock, shaping the rhythm of life before calendars and mechanical clocks existed. But the influence of the tides does not stop at livelihood. It also shaped the turning points of history. In war, understanding the tides could be the boundary between victory and defeat. From the Norman landing at Hastings to the Normandy campaign of the Second World War, every strategic decision carried the imprint of the moon. Brilliant generals did not only look at maps or listen to intelligence reports, they also listened to the rhythm of the ocean. No one mentions the moon in chronicles, but it was present in every wave that carried soldiers ashore. So it was with trade. when wooden ships laden with goods left Egyptian ports to feed mighty Rome, when Hanseatic merchants recorded meticulously in their ledgers, the tides were the deciding factor of profit or loss. A deep bay could be a paradise when the tide was high, but turn into a mud trap when the water receded. The busiest ports of humankind were chosen not only for geography, but also for the temperament of the sea, governed by the moon. Even in peacetime, the tides left their mark on human culture and spirit. Coastal festivals, fish markets, folk songs, all revolved around the moment when the sea opened or closed. Writers and poets from Shakespeare to modern authors have used the tide as a metaphor for fate, opportunity, and inevitability. On every page, the tide became a symbol of choice. If one knows to seize it as it rises, one will be carried to new horizons. If missed, one will be stranded in shallow waters. Today, as humanity steps into the technological age, many mistakenly believe we have broken free from the bonds of nature. But just look at tidal energy projects, and we see that link has never been severed. Modern engineers still calculate according to lunar cycles to harness power from the seas. Coastal cities like Venice or New Orleans still live in anxiety before tides that grow harsher with climate change. The tide is not an ancient phenomenon. It is knocking on every roof, every harbor, reminding us that humanity cannot separate itself from nature. Perhaps the most important lesson the tides teach us is humility. Amid scientific achievements, amid grand constructions, we must still bow to a silent pull from a small satellite orbiting Earth. The moon does not speak, does not show off, yet its power spreads everywhere, in the oysters opening and closing, in the history of wars, in the breath of commerce, and in the cultural memory of humankind. The tides, in a profound sense, are the symphony written by the cooperation of Earth and Moon. And humans, whether coastal fishermen, medieval merchants, or modern scientists, are only spectators, listening, learning, and seeking to blend into that melody. Therefore, when we stand before the shore and watch the waters draw away, let us remember it is not just a physical phenomenon. It is the heartbeat of the planet, the breath of history, the reminder that we live in a universe of connection. And the moon, the eternal companion, still holds the invisible thread that ties humans to the sea, and through it, to their very existence. In the tranquil darkness of the universe, the moon patiently composes the music of the tides, and humankind never ceases to find ways to turn that rhythm into a useful source of power. If predicting the tides was once a matter of survival for fishermen, today it has become a question of energy. Can the moon's eternal pull become one of the keys to helping humanity overcome the crises of fuel and climate? The picture of the tides has moved far beyond stone records or Victorian gear-driven machines. It is now stepping into the age of colossal turbines, global mathematical models, and the ambition to provide clean electricity for millions of homes. Unlike wind and the sun, tides carry a rare advantage: stability. The wind may stop blowing, clouds may block the sunlight, but the tides are faithful to an almost absolute degree. With every lunar cycle, coastal regions are guaranteed a schedule of rising and falling waters. It is this regularity that has led many engineers to call the tides the energy clock of the Earth. If wind and sunlight resemble nature's erratic generosity, then the tides are the long-term contract the moon signed with humanity billions of years ago. However, turning that stability into usable energy is a challenge. Barrages, the oldest method, have proven that the idea can become reality. From the Rance plant in France to later projects in South Korea, Canada, or Russia, tidal barrages have been supplying electricity for decades. Their principle is simple: hold water when the tide rises, then release it to spin turbines as the tide falls. But the price is not small. Natural flows are obstructed, coastal ecosystems are disrupted, and the birds and fish, long accustomed to ancient rhythms, now encounter artificial barriers. The tides still rise and fall, but habitats shrink. The question is, can humanity reap the moon's power without breaking the fragile cycles of estuaries? The temporary answer comes from new generation technologies. Instead of blocking the water, engineers seek to go with it. Horizontal axis turbines placed on the seabed work like wind turbines, but instead of air, they rotate thanks to tidal currents. Huge steel blades sink deep into the ocean where humans rarely see them, yet they quietly generate clean electricity. Their advantage lies in reducing environmental impact. Fish can swim around the blades, and the water continues to circulate without being completely blocked. Some designs even aim to use floating buoys or flexible ducts, harnessing not only the rise and fall of water levels but also the strong currents and straits. Even so, technical challenges remain great. The sea is harsh. Salt corrodes metal, storms can destroy structures, and maintenance in deep water is both dangerous and costly. Moreover, efficiency has yet to match offshore wind or solar power, which are rapidly decreasing in price. Tides, though persistent, are not always powerful. Not every coastline has tidal ranges large enough to justify investment. Thus, tidal energy today is like a precious gem that is hard to mine, full of potential, but demanding patience and finesse. Interestingly, as humans experiment with these technologies, we are also rediscovering the ancient relationship between sea and moon. Each turbine placed on a bay's floor is a reminder that the energy we use to light a bulb today actually comes from gravitational stretching hundreds of thousands of kilometers away in the sky. It is a connection both poetic and scientific. The light in a modern home can quite literally be the moon's light transformed into electricity. Not limited to power generation, tidal research also opens profound insights into the planet's future. Scientists point out that tides helped shape life on Earth from its earliest days. The rhythm of rising and falling waters created nutrient-rich coastal zones where primitive organisms first learned to adapt to leaving the ocean. Tides may have been the cradle of evolution. Today, as humanity strives to become a sustainable civilization, harnessing the tides to produce clean energy can be seen as a full circle. We are once again learning from the moon, just as our ancestors once lifted their eyes to the sky. In the future, technologies combining artificial intelligence, satellite data, and climate models will make predicting and exploiting tides even more precise. A coastal city could schedule its energy use based on tidal tables, just as fishermen once prepared their boats and nets. Countries with long coastlines, such as Vietnam, the UK, Canada, or Indonesia, are being considered tidal energy mines of great potential. There is even a vision of a global tidal power grid, where multiple regions harvest in sync to complement other renewable sources. But before that vision becomes reality, the core question remains how to balance energy needs with the integrity of the oceans. If humans once learned to listen to the sea to know when it was safe to sail, now we must learn to listen to know when we are interfering too deeply. The moon may grant us an eternal rhythm, but the way we dance to it will determine not only the future of energy, but also the coastal life of millions of species. The tides, like a symphony, continue to play every day. At times, standing on the shore as the waters rise, one may feel as if hearing the very heartbeat of the earth beating steadily under the pull of its ancient companion. And perhaps, if we learn to live with that rhythm, both harnessing and preserving, humanity will not only gain another source of energy, but also maintain the invisible thread that binds us to the universe. If machines and turbines bring tides into the laboratory, then the ocean's extreme phenomena return tides to the realm of wonder. They remind us that although humans have learned to measure, forecast, and even harness this power, the sea still holds surprises enough to astonish anyone standing before it. One of the clearest demonstrations is the tidal bore, the moment when the sea loses patience and rushes in like an army. In narrow rivers, the rising tide does not simply lift the water level gently, but compresses it into a giant wall of water, surging upstream at the speed of a storm. When people hear the roaring from afar, they know the current is about to transform, and the river's calm surface will give way to a parade of white-crested waves. In China, the Qiantang River has turned this phenomenon into a visual festival, the silver dragon charging upstream with heights that can reach 9 meters. For centuries, crowds have stood along the banks cheering, both fearful and thrilled by the power born of the moon's silent pull. Today, surfers even dare to ride the back of this water dragon, carrying within themselves the pride of facing directly an ancient natural phenomenon. But these wonders are not confined to Asia. In England, the River Severn also witnesses a Severn bore, a tidal wave rising several times a year, powerful enough to attract a community of kayakers and surfers from around the world. In South America, the Amazon basin roars with the Pororoca, a massive surge of water rushing into mangrove forests, dragging along trees, and reshaping the riverbanks. The riverside tribes have long known this event, passing down stories of the wave that is both destructive and life filled, a testament to the ocean's power deep inland. Whether in Asia, Europe, or South America, tidal bores all share a common message that tides are not just the gentle rhythm of the sea, but under special conditions can become a grand and fierce procession. No less mysterious are tidal whirlpools, where vast currents are squeezed through straits, forcing the ocean to spin around itself. In Norway, the Saltstraumen whirlpool has become legend, where old sailors told tales of sea monsters swallowing ships. In reality, that monster is mathematics, the combination of strong tides, rugged seabeds, and narrow currents forming vortices capable of engulfing small boats. In Japan, the Naruto whirlpools also swirl at speeds over 20 kilometers per hour, not dangerous enough to threaten large ships, but sufficient to create a spectacle that has inspired poetry, painting, and even cinema for centuries. Looking down at those endless spinning circles of water, one sees a visual image of eternal repetition. The ocean, pulled by the moon, still turning like the heartbeat of the earth. Interestingly, not every place gets to witness such magnificence. In stark contrast to tidal bores, the Mediterranean experiences tides so gentle they are barely noticeable. Due to the basin's enclosed structure, the difference between high and low water here is only a few centimeters. For coastal residents, tides seem non-existent, making the Mediterranean Sea an exception in the global picture. Similarly, the Baltic Sea has only very small tides. By contrast, some areas in the Gulf of Mexico have only one high tide and one low tide each day, unlike the usual twice-daily pattern. These exceptions make the global tidal picture more diverse, proving that under the same gravitational force, geography and ocean structure can create the unique languages of the sea. Alongside extreme phenomena, there is also a long-standing confusion in language, the phrase tidal wave. For centuries, people used it to refer to any large wave, including disasters born from undersea earthquakes, tsunamis. Even today, many newspapers still mistakenly call tsunamis tidal waves, though in fact they are completely different. Tides are the result of celestial mechanics, predictable for centuries. Tsunamis are the offspring of an unstable Earth, arriving suddenly and devastatingly. To conflate the two is not only a scientific error, but also overlooks the profound difference between the moon's eternal rhythm and the planet's sudden fury. Yet the persistence of the term tidal wave shows the power of imagery. In the human mind, tides have always been the symbol of oceanic motion, so much so that they became the default measure for every upheaval of the waters. Finally, if one wishes to witness tides at their maximum, one need only go to the Bay of Fundy in Canada or certain areas of Alaska where tidal ranges can exceed 15 meters. When the tide ebbs, vast mudflats are exposed, only to be completely submerged a few hours later under a towering wall of water. Such power is enough to reshape landscapes, forcing humans to adjust their daily rhythms to the tide. There, tides are not just a natural phenomenon, but the conductor orchestrating work schedules, fishing hours, and even the architecture of coastal communities. From dragon-like surging waves to endlessly swirling whirlpools, from tranquil seas to places of monumental water shifts, tides have been and continue to tell the complex story of the interplay between moon and earth. They are at once a scientific phenomenon, predictable with precision, and an artistic performance full of surprise. And perhaps it is precisely this coexistence of stability and unpredictability that makes tides one of nature's most captivating mysteries. As we watch the sea rise and fall, we do not just see the movement of water, but hear the echo of the cosmos, a reminder that the rhythm of this planet is forever tied to the moon above.